way we did these buttons in general, it's pretty easy to add two more, right? We just add them down here to our template item. So we have fave. Let's do a couple more. Button, I will call it move-up. We'll also have a class of button on it for those foundation styles. Inside, I will have i.fa.what. fa dash, let's just type up. Okay, we have upload, arrow up. Arrow up seems good to me. Could also have used thumbs up for fave, if you want to make it like a like button. FA arrow up. Oops. So arrow down should be very, very similar. Let's add another button just like it underneath, but change the class to move down and change the font awesome to arrow down. See how the buttons look. That'll do. Now let's make them work. At this point, render list item is getting a tad long. I'm pretty tempted to move adding all these event listeners to a separate function, but we'll wait a minute for that. Let's copy what we did for fave. We'll name the method move up. And the button we grab is not the fave button, but the move dash up button. And right now I'm binding it to this and passing in the flick itself. Do we need the flick itself? What do you think? We could remove it and only add it once we discover we need it, or we could leave it in and try to remember to take it back out afterward, unless we're already sure we would need it. So what are we going to have to do when we move up? We're going to have to change both the DOM by actually moving the LI on the page, and we're going to have to change the array, right? And easiest way to find it in the array is probably using the ID. So we could get that from the LI if we tried hard enough, but let's just pass it in. Let's try using the actual flick as an argument. So let's write this function. Here's fave flick. Underneath that, oops, I forgot my comma earlier. Move up. Again, the event will be the last argument. So it'll receive the flick first, then the event. We do not need to prevent default because this button doesn't do anything. We don't need to console log that anymore either. Once again, we should probably grab the list item, which we do using the event target and then finding the closest flick. Then what do we do? How'd you move it? What DOM method did you use? Insert before, which we used once before. So we need the actual list, not just the list item, but the list, which we already have saved, I believe, as a property of the object itself. This.list. Remember doing that? So we don't have to grab it again. It's already there. So this.list dot insert before. First argument is the thing to insert, so that's the new li, right? The list item, as we've called it. And we need to tell it what to insert it before. What do we insert it before? Whatever came before it, right? So how do we find that? Yep. So list item dot previous sibling. There's also previous element sibling, if you were worried about a text node being in between or something. So we might want to use that just in case. Probably not going to make a difference, but it's slightly safer. Okay, so we haven't changed the array yet, but let's just try that out. Refresh. Let's move the fly up. All right, that worked. Let's click it again. What? What? So what's happening here, since I used visibility hidden instead of display none, that template is still there and taking up space. So we could deal with that by changing visibility hidden to display none, like Dave wanted to do in the first place. But now, what the heck is this? I don't know. Let's delete it. I can't even delete it. What is this thing? Ah! Everything's terrible. Why won't it go away? And it's visible and everything. Display none. Template display none. Let's shift refresh here. Yeah. Why is it doing that? I did shift refresh. Oh, I'm sorry. Hard reload? Whoa. Which I accidentally opened it in another window as well. That's how hard I refreshed it. So what's my actual array look like right now? App.flicks. It just has the two things in it. Something terrible is going on. Fresh. Why are you here? You have that class of template. And on that class of template, I said display none. Oh, well. Oh, yeah, we just removed that. What's going on? This doesn't make good sense. For some reason, display none is getting overridden because flick has display flex on it. So what could we do about this? We could change the order. Just put that after it. Or we could make template more specific. Say specifically something with a class of flick that also has a class of template. Display none. Then it goes away. So the way precedence and stuff works in CSS is slightly complicated, but it depends partially on the order in which the rules appear, which is why we import our style sheet last. And it depends on how specific the rule is. And basically, you get points of specificity for additional things like classes, pseudo-classes, IDs, additional elements like something that is a child of something else is more specific than just that thing, which is why this works. And would still work if we moved it above this rule. There's a CSS specificity calculator that we'll link to from the website You test some of this out. We'll talk more about that in a minute, though. Let's get back to trying to make this thing work. So let's just pull from our friend IMDb here. Yeah, Tim and Eric's $1 billion movie. Very good. Morning Glory. Move it up. That works. Move it up again. It goes to the bottom. Is that what we want? No. I say not. I say that's unexpected behavior. I think up shouldn't work if you're already the very first thing. So we could go ahead and add that check, but let's go ahead and fix the array thing first, because it might be a little easier doing it that way. So we want to find where this thing is in the array, right? Before we just did a for loop. Dirty little secret. There's an easier way. Let's look at our friend MDN. Let's look for array, find index. Find index method returns the index of the first element in the array that satisfies the provided testing function. Otherwise, -1 is returned. So just like map, we're going to pass it a function that tells it the rule to check. And again, it calls that argument the callback. When you pass a function as an argument to another function, those are called callbacks, because that function is going to call it back. Looks like it takes a few arguments. So let's see here. We'll do this before we actually insert it in the DOM. I'm going to set the result to index. So this dot list, this dot list is the UL. This dot flicks is the actual collection. Dot find index, and we know it receives a function. We could write this function as a named function. It's going to be a one-liner though, so I'm just going to do it in line. And since we are using ES6, most of the time you just use an arrow function for these instead of writing out function. Not only does it handle binding this, even though we don't care in this case, it's just plain shorter. It doesn't take up so much darn space. So the function we write is going to receive some arguments. The element, the current item in the array, just like map, that's going to be the first thing. Then the index of the current element being processed in the array, and then the array itself. I don't think we need to do anything with the array itself, so I'm just going to grab those first two. So the first one is the current flick. So I will just call it current flick. And then it's going to give us I, basically. That's an arrow function. And then we just need to write a function that will return true when it's the index that we want. So the current item in the array, again, is going to be current flick. So we want to compare current flick.id to flick.id, right? And we need to return that. So it's going to call this function on everything in the array until it finds the right one, until this function returns true with one of them. Then it's going to stop. We don't have to break out of it. That's how it works. So then it'll return -1 if it wasn't in there at all. And if it's the very first thing in the array, what will it return? 0, right? So we can just check if index is greater than 0. If index greater than 0, only then do we run insert before Oops. Dang it. And then we also need to mess with the array itself. Did you have a question?
Yeah, why does that return the ID earlier and not a Boolean? Or does it?
So the inner function here does return a Boolean, but find index itself returns the index at the time that that thing returned true. So yeah, we never get to interact with this return value because that's just the callback. So somewhere inside the implementation of find index, it's checking the return value and deciding to return the index when we do. All right, so messing with the array. What do we need to do? Insert before would be really handy here. We don't have that on arrays, unfortunately. So we're going to have to actually change the indices of a couple of items in the array. The current one and the one of whatever came before it. So let's find the one that came before it, which is easy enough. Previous flick is this.flicks I minus 1, right? Or index minus 1, I called it. Then I can set this dot flicks index minus 1 equal to flick, and this dot flicks index to previous flick. Make sense? So I just changed the array. What do we need to do anytime we change the array? Update local storage with this.save. I'm putting that inside the if, not outside the if, because if we decided not to move it, then we don't need to worry about that, do we? Nothing changed. So let's see if that basically worked. Refresh. I cannot move this up, but I can move this up. So now we can't move up. And if we refresh the page, move it, refresh the page, the order stays the same. Yeah, Brandon.
I have a problem with the first line in move up. It's like getting the list item. It says cannot read property target find that object.
Did you put the event in your list? And did you put them in the right order? So flick and do you have flick and event in your list here? And then when you called it, did you have the bind this way? Okay. Okay, so move up seems to basically work. Now, I would like to tell the user, for the sake of user experience, which we are all into, right, that they can't do it. So we could do that just with CSS. Because we can do first child, right? Now, it's not the button that's the first child, it's the LI, right? So what we want to say is a move up button that is a descendant of a flick that is the first child of its parent. So it's the button we want to find. So button dot move up, move dash up. That is a descendant of a flick that is its parent's first child. So the space for a descendant element. Make sense? Why descendant and not child? Because there is something in between, right? There's that actions button group. So if that's the case, I'm going to change the background color to gray. I'm going to change the text color to a slightly lighter gray, which is going to change the color of the icon. And then I'm also going to change the mouse cursor to not allowed. Let's see if it worked. Refresh. We see that one turned gray. The other one did not turn gray. And if I hover over it, I get that cursor right there, which is going to be different, obviously, on Windows. Let's inspect this. Now I actually grabbed the I, not the button, so let's grab the button. Cursor not allowed. If you try to edit this in place, you can see what some of the other possible values for edit are. For cursor. There's a ton. Some of them have to do with resizing things. So if you want to get like the little arrows for resizing, or resizing a column, or resizing a row, those are all things you can set here. All kinds of good stuff. Not allowed is appropriate here. Yeah, Dave.
Even though I click on the button, it still puts focus on the disable button. Is there a way we can stop that?
Still puts focus on the disabled button. There is actually a way that we can do that. CSS, no focus. There is... that's not what I want. I can't remember what it's called. But there is something you can add to make something never receive focus. I use it on the website for the site, actually. Let me see if I can find that real quick. No, not you. You. Actually, no, that's for selecting. Yeah. We'll see if this works. I'm not sure it does. But there is user select none. What I've used that for in the past is if you're trying to highlight the text in something and there's a portion of that that you don't want to be part of what they select, like for the sake of copying and pasting, you can use that. I'm not sure whether that affects the focus or not. Refresh. No, that doesn't help. So, yeah, you might have to do something like add an event listener on focus that immediately blurs it or something like that if it's important to you. Or make it something other than a button. Make it a div or something when it's disabled. But that's kind of a pain in the neck too. So move down is not very different. Let's have a look at it. We'll go ahead and take a break though, because it's past halfway and everyone could probably use a stretch. So we'll do that. We'll do move down, and then we'll do more interesting things.